Well, it's been a little more than 3 weeks since the 95th Academy Awards. It's April now. Times have changed. It's time to start looking forward to the next ceremony. I know it's ridiculously early. Like, ridiculously early. It's only April. We don't know a whole lot of what's going to happen over the next few months, but that's part of the fun of it. I like thinking about what might be coming out over the next 8 months that could be a major Oscar contender. So in this, my very first predictions video for the 2024 award season, I'm going to break things down into 3 parts. First, I wanted to talk about, has anything come out in theaters the first 3 months of 2023 that could potentially get an Oscar nomination next year? Second, I'm going to talk about the big releases of April and if I think any of those could maybe get in. And then third, I'm going to talk about the 10 titles coming out between now and the end of December of 2023 that I think have very good shots at getting into next year's Oscars. We don't know a whole lot right now. It's very early in the year. We'll know a little bit more past the Cannes Film Festival, and then going into August, September, we'll start to feel out kind of what are the movies hitting with critics and with audiences. Here in early April, it's just kind of a guessing game based on directors, based on actors. I mean, if you've been around long enough, sometimes you can just tell by who's directing the film and who is in the film. Is there an interesting pairing of actors in the movie? Is it coming out at the very end of the year? So there are some factors to decide what's going to get in at next year's Oscars, and I'm really excited to break it down. Now, before we get started, I wanted to tell you about the brand new Brian ROWE Video Patreon, which launched just a couple weeks ago. Very exciting incentives to join the Patreon, including exclusive Patreon-only videos that you can't watch here on YouTube. You have early access to all my videos, live Q&As, behind-the-scenes content, and your name at the end of every new YouTube video I make to say thank you. Head on over to patreon.com/BrianRoweVideo, where you can watch my new Patreon exclusive video all about the late great Heath Ledger and his posthumous Oscar win for The Dark Knight. Alright, so what has come out so far this year that I think could get in at next year's Oscars? Let's make this really short and sweet. Pretty much nothing. I don't think anything gets in outside of maybe John Wick Chapter 4 in Best Sound. I would love to see that film get into Best Cinematography, Best Editing, but I looked the other day and a John Wick movie has never gotten an Oscar nomination, so I wonder if Part 4 could get in when Parts 1, 2, and 3 didn't. I also feel like the movie coming out in March hurts it. If John Wick Chapter 4 had come out in November, December, I'd say it'd have a really good chance, but because it is so early in the year, there's going to be a lot more movies throughout the summer and fall that can get into Best Sound, can get into Best Cinematography. As of now, I think it's the one movie that's come out in January, February, or March of 2023 that could get in for something because it is such a dazzling movie. I just saw it the other day. It is fantastic. I would love to see it get nominated for something. I don't know. We'll see. I mean, I thought about Creed 3. Creed 3 got great reviews, but Creed 2 did not get an Oscar nomination. The only Oscar nomination Creed 1 got was for Sylvester Stallone in supporting actor. So I don't think Creed 3 gets in for anything. I mean, could Cocaine Bear get in for visual effects? I don't think so. And then I just watched Tetris on Apple TV Plus. That was a really solid movie, but I feel like quietly dropping on Apple TV Plus at the end of March probably means that Tetris does not show up next year for Oscar nominations, but I really liked it. And then there's been a few Sundance movies that have already come out. Rye Lane is absolutely wonderful. It was one of my top 5 favorite films of Sundance last January, and it's getting an even quieter release, I would say, than Tetris. Rye Lane just dropped on Hulu, and I don't know if it's going to be able to get any sort of traction. And then 1001 is another Sundance movie that just got a release. I believe it's only in theaters and that won the grand jury prize in the dramatic competition at Sundance. I don't know what happened, but somehow I missed that one. I didn't see it. So I do want to check that one out. I've heard great things. I mean, if it wins a grand jury prize at Sundance, you kind of have to keep an eye on it, but I don't know if that can hang on all the way to next year. I mean, look, we're just coming off of Everything Everywhere All at Once, winning 7 Academy Awards, including Best Picture, Best Director, Best Actress. That movie premiered at the South by Southwest Film Festival in mid-March 2022. It opened in limited release at the end of March, and then it went wider in April. I think this idea that your movie has to come out in November or December is done. Like, that's over. Like, on paper, it made more sense that, like, The Fabelmans coming out Thanksgiving weekend from director Steven Spielberg, that would have been the big Oscar winner, and it was not. It was the movie that came out the previous spring that everybody really loved. I really hope the award success of Everything Everywhere All at Once gives studios the confidence to bring out their really good material early in the year. Don't just hang on to it until the very, very end. Bring it out early. Maybe it could be the next Everything Everywhere All at Once. All right, so secondly, let's talk about what's coming out in April that could be contenders at next year's Oscars. To me, there's just one. Based on the reviews that I've seen thus far, we'll see how it does at the box office. I do think that will help. But I do think the one movie coming out in April that could get into at least 2 or 3 categories at next year's Oscars is Air, directed by Ben Affleck. It feels like the kind of real-life story with a great cast, a well-known, acclaimed director, that if there's not like a ton of competition in the fall, it could be that one spring release that kind of hangs on and gets into the early ceremonies, maybe gets a couple Golden Globe nominations, and gets in at the Oscars. It's possible. I do think the box office will be important. If it just kind of comes and goes, and by late April it's out of theaters and nobody's really talking about it, then I don't think it'll make it. I mean, the one thing about Everything Everywhere All at Once was that it was a huge box office sensation that stayed in theaters through like May through June, and I don't think Air is going to do that. But I do feel like if it's a movie everybody really likes and some maybe love, then maybe it could get in next year. We shall see. What are some other movies coming out in April? I mean, there's the Super Mario Brothers movie. We really haven't had an Oscar nomination for a video game movie before. I just don't think so. I mean, we have a Pixar movie coming out this summer. I'm sure there'll be a couple end-of-the-year animated film releases that do very well. I don't think the Super Mario Brothers movie gets an Oscar nomination. That would be a surprise to me. What about Beau is Afraid? Beau is Afraid might be the movie of April I'm most looking forward to. I love Ari Aster. Hereditary was my favorite film of 2018. I still think Toni Collette should have gotten nominated for Best Actress, but that's a whole other video I'm sure I'll do down the road. And then I thought Midsommar was amazing too. That made my top 10 list of 2019. And now we finally have his third feature, Beau is Afraid, starring Joaquin Phoenix. Could this be a spoiler? Could this be a surprise? A movie everybody really loves? I don't think so. I mean, outside of the reviews just being absolutely stellar and everybody getting behind the movie all the way till the end of the year, Beau is Afraid feels to me like Men, the Alex Garland film that came out last May, had a lot of buzz around it, kind of a genre movie, and then it just kind of died. It just went away. I don't think Beau is Afraid gets in, especially considering that Joaquin Phoenix has an end-of-the-year epic, Napoleon, directed by Ridley Scott. I think that will be kind of his Oscar contender movie. And Beau is Afraid, although I'm sure many people are going to like it, I'm very excited for it, I don't think it becomes an Oscar contender. I mean, given that Hereditary did not get a single Oscar nomination, tells me that Ari Aster isn't very well liked yet by the Academy. Now, I'm not sure how much of a genre movie Beau is Afraid is. Maybe it's more of a drama. I haven't seen it yet. But I'm very excited about it nonetheless. We'll see what happens. I would love to predict that Showing Up will be an Oscar contender next year, but I think a quiet April release for a new Kelly Reichardt movie doesn't bode well. I mean, Michelle Williams is coming off her 5th Oscar nomination. You can never count her out. You never know. Kelly Reichardt, I don't think any of her films has gotten an Oscar nomination, which is insane because she's so great. She's so talented. Wendy and Lucy, starring Michelle Williams, is an amazing film. First Cow, I want to say, got a lot of buzz, won a lot of critics' prizes, and then did not get in at the Oscars, so I don't think Showing Up will make it. And then lastly, Renfield, of course, is going to get Nicolas Cage an Oscar nomination, right? Right? No? Okay. Now, third, let's talk about the 10 movies that I feel most confident right now will get in at the Oscars in some capacity. I don't know if all of these movies can necessarily get into picture, director, actor, actress, those kinds of categories, but I do feel pretty good that these movies will do well. Let's start with number 1, Killers of the Flower Moon, starring Leonardo DiCaprio and directed by the great Martin Scorsese. I'm feeling pretty freaking good that this movie will get into a lot of the top categories. It's premiering at the Cannes Film Festival in May. We're finally getting a feature film that brings together DiCaprio, Robert De Niro, and Martin Scorsese for the same movie. And it's supposed to be almost 4 hours long. I don't know if that hurts the movie or helps it. I mean, The Irishman was 3.5 hours long, and it got 10 Oscar nominations. I just cannot imagine Killers of the Flower Moon premiering at the Cannes Film Festival, and then it just gets kind of mixed reviews, and come January, February 2024, it's left off the list. Like, I just don't see that happening. Martin Scorsese has had a pretty good track record, especially as of late. His only movie of the last decade that didn't do very well at the Oscars was Silence, but even that got into cinematography. But then you have Hugo, The Wolf of Wall Street, and The Irishman all getting in for Best Picture, Best Director. Killers of the Flower Moon, outside of it being a disaster, which I don't see happening, will be a major player at next year's Oscar ceremony, and I can't wait to see it. Number 2 is Dune Part 2. Now, this is a second installment, so it's not necessarily guaranteed to do as well at the Oscars as the first Dune movie did from 2 years ago, but I just have a feeling it's going to be even better, even more immersive, and I feel like Dune not doing well in the top categories at the Oscars last year, they might want to reward Denis Villeneuve, who didn't get into the directing category for the first Dune. And I just feel like it's going to be bigger and better, will deliver on everything we're hoping for. And so I think that one will do very well at the box office. And outside of it being a lesser film than the first one, will also get into the Oscars. Whether it gets into picture, director versus maybe just some technical categories, I don't know. I mean, we just saw Black Panther: Wakanda Forever kind of disappoint at the Oscars. Like, the first Black Panther movie got into Best Picture, and then the second one did not get into picture. And so when it comes to Dune Part 2, we'll have to see. But right now, I'm feeling pretty good. It gets into picture, director, and some other major categories. My number 3 movie on this list is Oppenheimer. I think Oppenheimer is going to do very well at next year's Oscars. I know Nolan's last movie, Tenet, didn't do so well. It just won visual effects. But that was a really kind of out there synopsis, out there film. Whereas I think Oppenheimer, Nolan's bringing things a little bit back down to earth. He finally did really well at the Oscars with Dunkirk, which told a real-life story, and Oppenheimer is a real-life story with an astonishing ensemble of actors. I'm already quietly crossing my fingers that Emily Blunt gets her first Oscar nomination. She still has never been nominated before. I don't know how much of the movie she's in, but we'll see. I'm hopeful, but I'm a huge Christopher Nolan fan, and Oppenheimer just feels like it's going to be on a very grand scale. And considering that it's like an historical drama from Christopher Nolan, who got into picture and director with Dunkirk, yeah, I think Oppenheimer will get in. I think it gets in for picture, probably director, and I'm very excited. Number 4 is Maestro, the new film from Bradley Cooper. Unless this movie disappoints, I think this might be the film that finally gets Bradley Cooper an Oscar. Whether it's in director or actor, I'm not sure, but based on the stills that I've seen of this movie, it seems like the kind of performance that the Academy is definitely going to go for. The makeup job, the prosthetics on Cooper for this movie looks pretty extraordinary, and it looks like it's a film about art and the creative life. It seems like catnip for the Academy. And considering how many Oscar nominations Bradley Cooper has received in the last decade without ever winning, I do feel like his narrative next award season will feel like, okay, it's time to give Cooper something. Like, he's directing movies, he's disappearing into the lead role in Maestro. Like, outside of the movie disappointing, outside of the movie not being very good, I think Maestro will finally win Cooper an Oscar, most likely in Best Actor. Number 5 is what might be my favorite film of 2023, and that's Past Lives. Past Lives was the stunning revelation at Sundance. The movie that made me cry, the movie I have not stopped thinking about since January. It's finally been confirmed that A24 is putting this movie out theatrically in June. I don't know whether to feel good or bad about that release date. I feel like it should be fine because the movie is so great. The critics are going to go nuts for it. I don't know how well Past Lives does at the box office. It's not going to be a blockbuster hit a la Everything Everywhere All at Once. That's not going to happen. It's a very quiet film, and I just hope it hangs on. I hope it's one of those summer releases that starts growing and building and getting more people in the theater, because it is a special film. It's a great movie. I could see it getting into Best Picture, Best Actress. I mean, I don't know if it can win anything next year, but I will be shocked if Past Lives comes out in June and by August, September is kind of forgotten about for the latest and greatest, and then doesn't come back for any nominations next year. I would be really disappointed if Past Lives doesn't get at least 1 or 2 Oscar nominations. I think it is just an extraordinary piece of filmmaking that I cannot wait to watch again. And I'm feeling pretty good that the critics especially will push that movie along into the fall and winter, keep it fresh in everyone's minds, gets it into some of the early award ceremonies, and get that movie into the Oscars. I want that thing nominated in picture, director, actor, actress, supporting actor, and original screenplay would be fantastic. Number 6 is The Color Purple. Now, will this new musical adaptation get as many nominations as the 1985 Steven Spielberg movie got? 11? Probably not, but remember, The Color Purple by Spielberg got 11 nominations and went home with nothing. So maybe this time The Color Purple can actually win an Oscar. Like, wouldn't that be great? I don't know much about this one except that it comes out in December. It's like the big end of the year musical release theatrically. Now, of course, we've seen a lot of end of the year musicals crash and burn. Cats from 2019 comes to mind. But The Color Purple, if it's done well, it's a great story. I love the film. I've seen it on the stage. Great songs. The cast in the movie version is exceptional. So I'm feeling pretty good that that film does well come Oscar time. I would be surprised unless it's really awful. You know, there's always that possibility with some of these movies we talk about that are coming out later in the year. But I would be shocked. I would be shocked if the new Color Purple did not succeed. At the box office, I think it should do pretty well. and it'll get in at the Golden Globes, and I don't know what happens after that. But I would say, considering that the first Color Purple movie back in the 80s did so well at the Oscars, at least at the nomination level, that the new Color Purple musical adaptation will probably get into at least like 3 to 5 categories. Number 7 is a movie I am very excited about, and that is May December from director Todd Haynes, a movie that pairs Julianne Moore and Natalie Portman. Like, I'm in. Like, I don't even know. I don't even know how I'm going to contain myself waiting in line to see May December. Like, I'm gonna be in heaven before the movie even starts, even if it's just like okay. It's one of the more kind of middle of the road Todd Haynes movies. I will be happy. Like, I'm just very, very, very excited for that one. Can't wait. Now, I don't know if it has an official release date at the end of the year. I believe the film has wrapped production. It feels like the kind of movie that'll get a fall release date after premiering at one of the big festivals like Telluride or Toronto or Venice. Like, I could see that being a fall release. So, I mean, outside of the movie being pushed to like early 2024 or something, May, December hopefully will do well next award season. Todd Haynes has still never won an Oscar. I would love to see him win at some point, whether it's director or screenplay. He is such a talent. I love his work. Natalie Portman and Julianne Moore in the same movie? Sign me up. My number 8 film is Napoleon. Napoleon from director Ridley Scott, starring Joaquin Phoenix. When is Ridley Scott going to win an Oscar? He is in his mid-80s. I believe he's like 85 or 86. And he's been nominated for lots of things. He almost won for Gladiator. That movie won Best Picture, but he was not a producer on that film, and so he went home empty-handed that night. And there's been a lot of titles since that brought with him some Oscar buzz, like The Martian. He had 2 high-profile releases in 2021, like House of Gucci, but he didn't get in for those either. We are running out of time to give Ridley Scott an Academy Award. Could Napoleon be the movie to do it for him? I don't know. Based on how his last 2 kind of epic films did, House of Gucci and The Last Duel, I would say probably not, but Joaquin Phoenix in the lead role gives me hope. I love much of Scott's work, and I would be so happy if by the end of his career he got a competitive Oscar. Napoleon could be the one that does it for Ridley Scott. We shall see. Number 9 is Saltburn. I don't know a whole lot about this film, except that it's the second feature by Emerald Fennell, who won the original screenplay Oscar 2 years ago for Promising Young Woman, and it sounds really interesting. Barry Keoghan is the lead, and apparently it's kind of a play on The Talented Mr. Ripley. It's got that vibe to it, so I'm already down. Like, Barry Keoghan in the lead, Emerald Fennell behind the camera. She wrote it, she produced it, she directed it. It's her second feature, coming off of an Oscar win. So if that does well on the festival circuit, if the reviews are strong, I could see Saltburn being a major contender. And finally, my number 10 pick for a movie that I think could do very well at next year's Oscars is The Killer from director David Fincher. David Fincher is one of those directors where as soon as they announce a new feature film coming our way, I get very excited. I adore the work of David Fincher. And starting with The Curious Case of Benjamin Button all the way until Mank, every film he has made has gotten at least one nomination, and some of those movies have won prizes, and 3 of them got into Best Picture. So unless The Killer is like a full-on genre movie and doesn't get strong enough reviews, like maybe it just comes and goes, but I always have faith in David Fincher. I always have faith that he will deliver, and I think The Killer is another movie coming out later this year that could be a major Oscar contender. Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe, and let me know in the comments below what films coming out later this year do you think will be nominated for lots of Oscars at the 2024 ceremony. I'll see you next time.